As the first light of morning touched the window of the Quiet Spine bookstore, the small town of Raventon was still asleep. Located near northern Minnesota, Raventon was usually known for its quiet, yet that morning held a strange unease. The man arranging books, dusting shelves, and hardly speaking a word was known as Jack Ryler. At least that's what people in Raventon believed. No one really knew who he was. He wasn't born or raised there. According to Jack, he came from Asheville, North Carolina, a town over 1,000 kilometers away, but no one could confirm it, and few ever asked. His gray hair was combed behind his ears, a simple jacket over his shoulders, and worn brown boots on his feet. Jack arrived at the bookstore every day at the exact same time, working like clockwork. He was never late and never distracted by anything outside the books. His discipline felt less like a habit and more like a remnant of one. He looked like a former soldier, but what kind? No one seemed to care. Until. To manager Leo, Jack had always been a mystery. Leo was young, ambitious, and arrogantly self-assured. He found Jack too slow, too quiet, and frankly, a little eerie. Their longest exchanges rarely went beyond, "Mr. Ryler, could you move that box to the other shelf?" "Of course." Leo often gave Jack the heaviest tasks, pushing him without ever knowing who he really was. That afternoon, as the sun dipped westward, the bookstore's door chimed. 5 teenagers entered, 3 boys and 2 girls. Loud laughter, headphones slung over their necks, and reckless boldness in their eyes. They broke the silence immediately, mocking book titles, reading out loud and laughing obnoxiously between the aisles. Jack was in the back, as always, aligning books, checking labels, inspecting old spines. He heard them, but said nothing. Then one of the boys, broad-shouldered and wearing a black t-shirt, spotted him. "Hey, old man, are there any books here older than you?" The others laughed. Jack glanced their way but gave no answer. He continued working. The boy pushed further. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf, Grandpa?" Just then, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up outside. The door opened, and 3 men stepped out. Black suits, sunglasses, clean-shaven. 1 led, 2 followed. Men like these weren't common in Raventon. The bell chimed again. Silence fell. The lead man walked straight toward Jack. The boy, now confused, tried to speak again, but the suited man gently moved him aside. The boy stumbled and went quiet. The man removed his sunglasses. "So this is where you've been. Had enough of the silence yet?" Jack wiped his hands on his coat, raised his head. His eyes were tired but calm. "I think I've made enough noise," he said softly. "This is better." The boy tried again to speak, but the man flashed an ID in his face. In bold letters, CIA. The kid backed away stunned. The rest froze. The man turned back to Jack. "The chief wants you again, maybe one last mission." Jack seemed indifferent, but something flickered in his eyes. "You need to do this for your country," the man insisted. That struck a nerve. Jack quietly shelved the book in his hand and nodded. The man turned to the others. "Bring her in." The bell rang again. An elderly woman entered, thin and slow with a cane. One of the suited men helped her through. When she saw Jack, her eyes filled with tears. She walked up and embraced him. Jack wrapped his arms around her slowly. She turned to the crowd. "It was the Cold War. I was in Czechoslovakia, held by the KGB, 4 men. This young man saved me alone. Pulled me from a hidden house, risked his life, never gave his name. I've owed him since. He's a legend." Jack remained silent, eyes on the woman, face expressionless but respectful. Leo stood frozen. The teenagers stepped back in awe. Jack grabbed his coat, slid in an old notebook and a lighter, walked to the door. As he passed Leo, Leo's hands trembled, his voice cracked. "It was an honor, Mr. Ryler." Jack nodded. The suited man pulled out a card, handed it to Jack. "Welcome back, CIA." The black SUV pulled away. The sun slipped behind the mountains. A breeze settled over Raventon. Inside the Quiet Spine, silence remained. Jack Ryler was gone, but those left behind stood frozen. Leo walked to the window. He had watched Jack leave, but his mind stayed behind. Everything that happened, it felt unreal. The man he thought was just a quiet, harmless old employee was a CIA agent, Leo whispered. Impossible. A few days later, another figure approached the bookstore. The door opened. A man stepped in, long dark coat, brown hat, notebook in hand. He had the look of a journalist. Leo braced himself. "Good evening. Is Jack Ryler here?" "No, he no longer works here." "Since when?" Leo paused, studied the man's eyes. He wasn't an ordinary reporter. The man introduced himself. "Alan Drayton, Raventon Daily Post. I ask not as a journalist, but as someone who knew him." "You knew Jack?" "No, but I know people who owe him." Leo's eyes softened. "Something happened the other day," he said. Alan leaned in. "What happened?" Leo explained. "The teenagers, the agents, the old woman, the goodbye." Alan listened in silence. When it ended, Alan nodded. "Sooner than I thought," he whispered. Leo grew impatient. Who was he, really? Was he truly CIA? Alan remained quiet, then took out an old photograph. A young man stood before the Berlin Wall, his eyes anxious but firm, his face very much like Jack. "Is that him?" Alan said nothing, slipped the photo away. "All I can tell you, Leo, is that this town holds more secrets than you know, and Jack Ryler stood at the center of them." Leo swallowed hard. Alan nodded goodbye and turned to leave. At the door he stopped, peered through the window. His face changed. He narrowed his eyes. Leo looked too. Across the street, a black SUV, parked, engine off, still, waiting. "Bit of a coincidence, don't you think?" Alan said. "It wasn't there before?" "Exactly, Jack's gone, but we're being watched." "Are we in danger?" Leo asked. Alan took a breath. "I don't know, but this bookstore, it's no longer just about books." They stared at the SUV. Then Alan left. Leo remained frozen at the glass. Minutes passed. The SUV didn't move. Leo turned to the empty chair Jack once sat in. It was vacant, but in a way, he was still there. That night, the bookstore lights stayed on a little longer than usual. The Jack Ryler story is just beginning, to be continued.